I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to the sunny side of life. Well, I got to give you an update because last week in the Monday episode, I was saying, well, I'm going to go down to Des Moines, the state capital, and do some lobbying for our public schools. As the school board president for City Community School District, thought it'd be a good idea, as we do, to go down to spend some time on the Hill. The Day on the Hill is what it's called, and I did that last week on Tuesday. Sojourned down to Des Moines, and spent a couple of hours beforehand listening to the lobbyists that represent the school board associations and school administrators associations, stuff like that, and learned some great things about what was going on this year in the Iowa Statehouse. And of course, had some questions of my own. And one of the things was about whether, why the Iowa Association of School Board Lobbyists had registered as undecided about House File number 1. And that was, of course, what I talked about last week with my friend Henry Stone's pet project bill to allow, kids that are attending a non-public school to just have to be, by law, accepted into athletic endeavors and teams in public schools. So I did ask that question, why they were undecided. Of course, all of the lobbyists that were lined up with the non-public schools were for it, and as was all of Bob Vander Platz's organizations, whatever he does, they were all in favor of it. Lobbying organizations that had registered against that as a no vote recommendation would have been School Administrators of Iowa, the Rural School Association, and so on and so forth, but not the Iowa Association of School Boards. And Emily Piper is the lead lobbyist for the ISB, and she does a great job, and she answered the question pretty directly. She says, listen, Henry Stone, as the majority whip, is doing a lot of good things for us and is willing to work with us, and he speaks the language of both the legislators and the school board lobbies, and so we're just going to stay undecided about this because we're not going to weigh in with yes or no. And I understand that. And I was so sad because I had 50 of these. No, I had like 250. I spent $50 printing these little stickers that you could put on your shirt that said foul, vote no, H-foul, HF1. And I was wearing one, but I understood what Emily was getting at. And with that in mind, I sadly had to keep my stickers in my briefcase and didn't hand them out as much as I wanted to because I knew that I had to go and wanted to talk to Henry about a variety of things. And so I did. Went up to the Hill and, I know. I was like, you should just wore it anyway. Now, there's the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say to this. I did get up to the Hill and did talk to Henry in his office, which was nice. It's a blessed life to be able to have background and a relationship with the House Majority Whip, and so met him at his office and talked to him for about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, and just said, hey, listen, Henry, here's 9 things that we think you're doing great and really carrying the water for the Iowa school boards, public education, and so I went through those 9 things with him, and then I said, here's 3 things that I think you should definitely vote no on, and that included anything that anything that had to do with telling public schools what their curriculum should be. I just don't think that legislators are good at that. I think they get a lot of wild ideas, and sometimes they're not even their own ideas. They come from other lobbying organizations, and that's what school boards do. We don't even really necessarily determine the entire curriculum. We hire administrators to do that, and in smaller school districts, I know that those curriculums are I think pretty good. And also, we have a lot of things that are put upon every school district in Iowa that the legislature has already put in to law through the Department of Education that gets filtered down to us, that we have these mandates that we do have in our curriculum already. We don't like that. We want to be able to teach our students in our individual communities the curriculum that we think best prepares them for a future in the work environment and college and whatever it happens to be. And so that's always a no. If you want to help develop curriculum and be in an elected office, then I encourage legislators to go ahead and run for the local school board, because that's where that action should take place, and that's where it should stay. So I told him that. He didn't, I don't know if he 100% agrees with me on that situation, because it is really fun for legislators to be able to just, punch down on the throats of the public school districts, whatever wild ideas they have for their curriculum. But he did hear it, and he understands that, and hopefully they will mitigate their temptation to tell public schools what they should have in their curriculum. We have public school boards that are elected in nonpartisan offices that anybody can run if you live in that district, and that's why we have a governing body for that. And we hire good professionals to be able to develop that curriculum and to follow through in the classroom with it. So I'm always opposed to that. There was another bill that I said he should vote no on. That's House File 88. You can look that up. It's kind of dumb. And then I said, and you're not going to like this one, Henry. And he's like, what is it? Just tell me. And I was like, House File 1. And he's like, no, that is going to the governor's desk. And I just said, I don't think so. I mean, that's just a bad idea. And we had a good conversation. You can listen to what my points were last week in that episode regarding House File 1. But overall, it was a very productive day. And I did tell him personally that I didn't think that his House File 1 was a good bill, and that it shouldn't move forward. He does not agree with me on that. And his explanation was that he saw it as parents taking out their issues on other parents, and the kids are the ones that are left in the middle. There are some districts in the state of Iowa that have, since last year's SSA ruling to get the money to go to non-public schools, public schools, some of them in the state of Iowa have eliminated their agreements with neighboring non-public schools to be able to participate in sports. And he has heard that from some of his constituents. Obviously, he's closely connected to one of the non-public schools in our area, and the two of our neighboring districts have eliminated their relationship with sports for one particular non-public school, and that has caused some issues, and it's happened elsewhere in the state. And so he doesn't think that that's fair. I don't think it's fair that the legislature should put that down and make it a law on public schools, for the simple fact that, as I said last week, our school district would more than likely continue relationships with students who want to participate in sports or any activity for that matter that don't attend our school. And if some districts don't do that, that could be better for us in some ways. And I think it should be left at the local level. That's where it belongs. But he wants to make it so that they are forced to do it, whether they like it or not. And I just said, well, why don't you pick out the jersey numbers and determine how much playing time they get while you're at it. And he didn't, I don't know if he thought that was funny or not. But anyway, so overall, a pretty good day. Henry does listen, and I knew that he would, but that's his bill, and still opposed. I'm still opposed. He's still very much in favor of it. So that's how that tracked down. Did talk to a few other legislators and saw some while we were were there. But while I was in the Capitol Rotunda, the great state of Iowa's got a beautiful Capitol. Man, there was a time when we made our architecture in this country look just so wonderful. And Iowa has a beautiful state capitol building. It's just wonderful to be in. And at the very center of it is this giant dome, and it's quite tall. I don't know how tall it is. Don't have the stats on that. And I had been up to, so you can go up to and into the dome, and you can overlook the levels below you, which is pretty cool. It's called there's like a whispering gallery that is up there. And so what that means is that you can, if you stand on one side of the gallery up in the dome, and then someone stands on the other side, you can have a conversation and hear them fine. It's the way the acoustics are. And we tested that. It was a little loud down below, but yeah, it does work, and it was pretty cool. That's just the first level. Not the first. I mean, it's still, I don't know, 60, 70 feet in the air that you're up there in that whispering gallery. But I was able to join a group from the IASB, and a friend of mine, Jesse Howard. He's been on the program before. He's now president of the IASB, and he's walking by me, and he's like, "Hey, Troy, we're going to go up to the gallery. Have you ever been to the top of the dome?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been up there." But he's like, "You want to go again?" I was like, "Sure." So up we went, almost 300 steps, and went to that first that whispering gallery, which was neat. It is high. And that's when you're still under the dome. There's a flag up there that's suspended way above you when you're in the whispering gallery, and then this big, beautiful, curved blue sky ceiling. And then so we went up to that. There's another level that you can go up to, and you can overlook that. And that was quite high. But it did not stop there, my friends. No, then you can go up even further, and now you're up above where the actual dome ceiling is, and you can kind of see how they changed the light bulbs up there from behind, which is kind of scary in a lot of ways. So you're actually inside the gold dome, but above the blue ceiling. And obviously, there's nothing really to see up there because you're inside. There are some interesting windows that are up in that part of the dome, the gold dome itself. It's real gold. And then you can go even higher. Yes, you can go all the way to the very top where there is a cupola, and it's got windows, and it's heated up there so that they can keep the windows from fogging over. And that is the very top of the dome. And you can go stand up there and look at the landscape all around Des Moines from that very high position on our Capitol Hill. But below that, just before you go up into that cupola, there's a door. And I did not know this. And you can go outside the dome. So you're actually on top of the gold dome of the capital of Iowa. And there's this little round, where you can walk around the top. There's obviously a handrail. Good Lord, could you imagine if there wasn't? It was a little windy that day, but the weather was very nice. And so we went outside, and we were now standing over the gold dome of the state of Iowa and outside. And I took some pictures. I kind of stayed, along the wall. I'm not afraid of heights, but I'm also not keen on falling. So it just seems like it's quite high. I don't even know how high it is up there. But it was a lot of steps. And that day, in an effort to look like what I thought a lobbyist for education looks like, I decided to cloak my conservative nature by wearing a turtleneck and a jacket. So I had this turtleneck, as Stephen Wright says. It always feels like a very weak man is strangling you. And I had this turtleneck, which was great for the weather that day. I didn't need I had my blazer on over that. So I looked it would be hard to tell if I was a conservative or a liberal, because no tie, dressed up, but still kind of, looking professory, but not necessarily. You just couldn't. That was my whole plan. And I was warm. But boy, was I warm. That's too many steps. It is way too many steps to go way up there wearing a jacket and a wool turtleneck to the very top of the capital of the state of Iowa. And when I got down, when I came back down and was back in the in the third floor of the Capitol, where the House and the Senate are separated in wings by the rotunda. I mean, I was sweating a little bit. My bald head was sweating a little bit. I wasn't like, pouring down sweat. It wasn't like we ran up and down there, but I was a BTU like geothermal furnace, and it was all held in my body by this wool turtleneck. It was just could not escape from the chimney, which is tightly wrapped around my probably too thick neck, and just all the heat was right in there, and I was just very warm. And it was at that time that Henry texted me and said, "Hey, where are you at?" So then I went to his office and sat down with him, and was just very, very sweaty underneath that turtleneck. But I played it cool. I wasn't like sweating on my forehead like I looked like I was, like if I was having a conversation with him, that it would look like I was, hiding something. I really wasn't. I just been to the very top of the Capitol. And look, if you're going to go up there, maybe wear sleeveless tank top, maybe one of those things that back in the 80s we wore when we were athletes, the half mesh shirt. That would be appropriate, I feel. Be a little weird, I admit, walking into the Capitol looking like that. But I think that style's coming back. Maybe shorts, stick with the 80s theme, go with the old Coach's shorts, great big wide band at the top, really short for no reason. Not quite sure what the material is made of, probably nylon or polyester, something like that. That'd probably be appropriate. Then pull the socks really, really high, up over your calves so they don't fall down. Yeah. That would have been interesting. Anyway, I didn't do that. That's not what I was wearing, and boy, was I hot. But I was acting like a lobbyist for education, and I thought I did a good job, despite being pretty sweaty. And this lobbying stuff, I kind of like it. Look, lobbyists are at the very base. They're people that they stay up on the issues, and they focus on the issues that are important to them, their organizations, whatever it happens to be, and then they spend that time talking to legislators when you and I are out doing whatever we're doing. Which, by the way, this past week, one of the things I did was, in the process of cleaning my wood shop with all these scrap pieces and moving things around, my one cat that remains, Edith, I decided to build her a cat tower, so I could consolidate everything in one spot for the cat in the wood shop, and then she could be comfortable. So she's got a multi-story cat tower now, which at the very top is her penthouse where she sleeps, and then below that is her kitchen dining room where she has her food and her water, and she's safe from the attacks of my wonderful dog Knox when he stops by the shop. He can't get up there. And then below that is kind of down, and, some toys dangling. And below that, of course, is storage and, for her food and so forth. And then at the very bottom level is her bathroom. And it's all inside this nice little tower that I made that is now implemented and part of my shop. It looks great. It was all made out of the scraps that I just had laying around that I needed to clean up anyway. And so that's what I was doing with my time, and pretty proud of it. It's ridiculous. I'm not a cat dad. I don't want to put myself out there like that, but it was a way for me to consolidate all of this stuff into one spot, keep her safe from the dog. They do have this playful relationship, but she gets tired of him after a while, and he can only, get so high so she's safe from him, and probably feels like a leopard queen or whatever she is. And then so that's what I did. That's the things, stuff like that. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing on a daily basis. We're busy, and we don't have the time to go, whether it's to our state house or to the county or to the federal government, and lobby for the things that we think our elected officials need to know about. So whether it's a volunteer lobbyist like me for certain things, whether it's education or veterans affairs or whatever it happens to be, things that I'm connected to, I'll go down because I've got the time sometimes to go and spend a day on the Hill and visit with legislators about these particular issues. And then to do that, you have to stay up on those relative bills and so on and so forth. And a lot of people don't have a lot of time for that, and I understand that. So, including myself all the time. So we have people that we pay, like that's their real job. Folks like Emily Piper does a great job. She represents a variety of things, as most lobbyists do. There's lobbying firms where there are people there and they just get paid to have relationships and communicate and build trust with local and state and federal legislators to try to get certain things through, whether it's through law or certain things repealed or different elements of administration adjusted so that the rules and the regulations are better suited for whatever their cause happens to be. You understand how lobbying works. So there are people that get paid to do what I did. My payment was how many calories I lost going up and down to the top of the Capitol, which was great. I must have lost several calories in that process, based just on the energy output that I was feeling wrapped up in that wonderful turtleneck. So I'm going to talk this week a little bit about lobbying. Not my part of it, but one of the things that what I learned down there on Tuesday last week was, one of the things we'd like to see in the public schools would be the ability to start. If we want to start our calendar in the school year a little bit earlier, we want the ability to do that because there's just a lot of things that get crammed into a school year, and the state sets left and right limits on that. And then if you look at the left as the start of the year and the right as the end of the year, the left limit is dictated. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the left limit in the state of Iowa of when schools can start is dictated by education lobbyists? No, my friend. It's dictated by the Iowa Tourism Board, whatever that is. Literally, what is that? I would understand the Hawaiian Tourism Board or the Floridian Tourism Board, but the Iowa Tourism Board, they're very, very busy about school calendars. You cannot start school every day that the kids are in school it costs us $2 million in Iowa tourism, and that's tax revenue that goes right back to the schools, they say, as they approach all of these leaders in our Statehouse. But the other big player in setting our school calendars, and you maybe would never know this, is actually the lobbyists for the state fair. The Iowa State Fair is the greatest state fair in America. It's so great that in next year, in 2026, the anniversary of the independence of our nation, President Trump has determined that it'll be a year-long celebration. It'll be focused in Iowa for state fairs, almost like a national state fair in Iowa. Kim Reynolds is going to be in charge of it, which, by the way, is what happens when you endorse Ron DeSantis instead of Trump, and then you don't get part of the cabinet. You become the state fair queen for America. I think that's what happened there a little bit, but I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be great to have people come and experience the Iowa State Fair. It's going to run like year round in 2026, and so that's going to be amazing, and lots of other celebrations going on. So that is great, but I was telling Henry, we probably don't want the state fair to determine when we start our schools. And that is an uphill battle because the state fair, those people are aggressive. And fortunately, he's the chair of the education committee. He knew that it was a concern that I had. We had to come to some terms there, and I think that they are going to figure out a little bit earlier time, and it might be just like most immediately after the state fair instead of like a week later or whatever. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I just thought that's crazy that the lobbyists for the state fair and whatever the Iowa Tourism Board is, like they have so much pull on when we get to start our school year. Lobbyists do work. Lobbyists work, whether it's at the state level or it is at the federal level. And that's why I thought it would be it got me thinking about some things that I had seen during the election cycle leading up to this last November. And I don't know if and even beyond, even into, so once Trump got elected, then it was, November and December, all the way even into January, we were still, when Congress kind of came back into session, if you were like me in Iowa and you watch YouTube, it seems like every single video that you watched had a commercial just like this.
I got married in 1977. We both grew up in southern Indiana. We began farming and over the years have grown and expanded our farm to a little over 5,000 acres. We've been very blessed to live in a great spot, to have great neighbors, and our son and daughter-in-law now are farming with us. I believe wind is an opportunity for our communities, for our families, and it's an investment in our future in Adams County. We always need to adapt. Agriculture has always adapted, and if we want our next generations to be able to farm, we need to be innovative. There are always those who are fearful of change and really don't want things to change. But I believe we need to always consider opportunities for ourselves and for our counties. My priorities are to keep our farm going, to make our community a great place that people want to live, and to keep our taxes low. I see these turbines as a way to do all that. The wind would provide probably 60 to 70% of our total tax revenue for our county. It's roads, bridges, schools, police and fire departments, things that we need around here. If politics has you skeptical about it, I say come and see for yourself. It is creating opportunities that we never had before.
So that was a commercial however YouTube works. I haven't figured it out yet, but they slap these little relative commercials based on probably wherever you live. I don't know. There's an algorithm, your router. It's magic. And I just got tired of seeing these commercials that were, and this one and a few others that were clearly being paid for by organizations that, in this case, claimed to be, they're conservative. And they were interested in clean energy and the resources that provides for the state of Iowa. Wind energy, solar, biodiesel, ethanol, these type of things. And what they're saying is call your congressman, call Senator Grassley, call Senator Ernst, and let them know that you're glad that Iowa has got all of these clean energy things. And I was, after a while, I was annoyed. Part of me, when a commercial comes up on YouTube, particularly when they break into the middle of a video that you're watching, I avert my eyes on purpose. Like, la, 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 I'm not listening. I will not be forced to watch your commercial. But this one was always played at the beginning of the ad or the beginning of the video, whatever it happened to be. And it just drove me nuts after a while. So I started researching it and said, well, what's this all about? Why? Who are these groups that are promoting and spending money with YouTube via Google, that is focused in on where I live and talking about, clean energy in the state? I'm like, I'm not opposed to, clean energy, but I am opposed to, I want to know follow the money. Where's this coming from? Well, it's a lobbying organizations for clean energy, and they were freaking out prior to the election. And then we're freaking out since the election because President Trump, rather notoriously, has made it clear that he thinks that wind turbines are ugly and he doesn't like solar panels. And he thinks that it's all kind of a scam. And I happen to sort of agree with some of those things, mostly because of subsidies. These lobbying organizations that were encouraging the YouTube viewers in Iowa, and I'm sure across the nation, relative to the inputs that they were getting in each state, were really what they were fighting for was money. They wanted to make sure that they kept that trough of money in subsidies coming their way. And I was like, well, maybe I should look into this. How much money could there possibly be in renewables? And the answer is a lot, an awful lot. According to Open Secret's website, that's a website that tracks political donations, alternative energy lobbying groups spent $25.5 million in 2020. If you remember that election, $25.5 million in 2020, which was about the same amount of money that they had spent prior to that since 2017. So since Donald Trump took office the first time, the alternative energy lobbying groups, and there are many, had spent about $25.5 million from 2017 through 2020. And then they did that same amount of money back in 2009 and 10. Which was, of course, when Obama was president, and also when many of our wind energy projects here in the Midwest just skyrocketed. And in 2020, just so you know, according to Open Secrets, 76% or just over $19 million went to Democrat politicians. I think the Democrats have a pretty good track record with supporting renewables, green energy, all of those type of things. And so over three quarters of the $25.5 million in 2020 went to the Democrats. But in 2021, Biden about that time is in office, sort of, whatever he was doing. They spent $40 million in 2021. What? From $25.5 million to $40 million. What was going on then? Well, it was, of course, the green energy. That whole thing was coming up. That green energy bill that they called the Inflation Reduction Act. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. The Inflation Reduction, quote, inflation reduction. Come back to that. But anyway, so $40 million in 2021, and then in 2022. These alternative energy groups upped it another $10 million. They spent $50 million in lobbying. And that was during the midterm elections. I wonder why that was so important to them. And then in 2023, I think the Biden administration by that point was pretty clearly waning, and people were starting to doubt maybe some capacities or what was going on. And also, let's just call it the shadow of the political grim reaper was at the Biden administration door in 2023. So then the alternative energy lobbying groups, they spent a record $60 million in lobbying federally, which is amazing. Think of all that money. Where does it all come from? So in this election cycle in 2024, they didn't spend as much. So like on the way out, they didn't quite spend as much. Of course, that money doesn't just disappear. The $60 million is still around there. You know what I'm saying? Like it's still in the coffers prior to the election year in 2024 when they spent $46 million. All in all, that was an effort, as we know, to preserve subsidies for wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, bioethanol, biodiesel, and even nuclear. Although, there are not a lot of fans of nuclear, which I am a huge fan of nuclear. I think it's great. But renewable energy lobbyists, they serve, these groups, renewable energy lobbyists all together serve 212 different types of clients. The lobbyists themselves, there's 583 of them that are registered out in Washington, D.C., and nearly 60% of those 583 lobbyists are former government employees. Whether they were former elected officials or unelected bureaucrats, nearly 2/3 of the 583 lobbyists that are working for renewable energy in representing these 212 clients in Washington, D.C. We're all, former employees of the U.S. government, whether elected or unelected bureaucrats. So the largest donor of that group this last election cycle in 2024 was Hanwha Group. Not familiar with Hanwha Group? Well, it's a gigantic South Korean company. They're a giant in energy manufacturing and multiple other industries. Hanwha they were the largest contributor, really trying to make sure that these subsidies for alternative energy stay in place. So it's great when you see a foreign country as the number one lobbying donor for a particular entity that results in subsidies, which are U.S. taxpayer dollars going out to all of these different industries. I find that a little problematic personally. Now, second in line, though, behind Hanwha was a little company that we're pretty familiar with around here where I live, Poet. Poet LLC was right behind that Hanwha Group. Now, Poet, of course, is got many biofuel refineries in the Midwest and around the country, and even nearby here in Forest City, not in Forest City, but over in Hamlin Town. So they're a big buyer of corn, soybeans, whatever it happens to be, and they're very much interested in keeping these subsidies going on, in that case for the biofuels side of the house. All of these fall under the green energy umbrella. You can jump down, and I did. I'm going to tell you about the 13th largest donor in the last election cycle for green energy, for alternative energy, was a company called First Solar. Why does that matter? Well, they gave less than $1 million, something like between $800,000 and $900,000, so not a huge amount. They were 13th in line in the last spending cycle for lobbying organizations. First Solar, according to PBS, donated $1.5 million to the Biden campaign back in 2020, and then spent another $2.8 million in addition to that, lobbying Congress and the Biden administration back in 2020, 2021. And it paid off big time. In 2022, here we go, Biden's amazing, quote, Inflation Reduction Act, unquote, in which $1 trillion, $1 trillion was spent on environmental spending, $1 trillion to reduce inflation, which it did not. But that's what it was called. It seemed like a good name. They're good at naming things. $1 trillion spent on environmental spending in the Inflation Reduction Act. First Solar stock price immediately after that doubled to what will likely be $10 billion in just the next few years. Amazing. And it was Democratic donors that really made bank, like Farhad Fred Ibrahimi, who became a billionaire in 2023 thanks to his 5% share of First Solar. He, Ibrahimi, and his wife each donated at least $1 million to the Biden campaign just last year, which, as we know, when Biden crapped the bed at the debate with Trump and then ultimately was forced to hand it over to Kamala Harris, that money stayed with them, and it became the Harris campaign money. So that was part of it, I suppose. But that isn't even the real story, friends. First Solar is an American-based company. It's a manufacturer of solar panels. They compete with foreign adversaries in, say, China and, well, apparently South Korea. Okay, well, that sounds like something that Trump would probably like, made in America. However, the solar panels, and I've used this analogy before, are like the McDonald's burger and fries here. If you remember, McDonald's burgers and fries are what you and I think of when we think of McDonald's. Maybe your kids think of chicken nuggets, whatever those are. Whatever it happens to be. Ever since they went away from from beef tallow, their fries haven't just been as good. But regardless, we think it's about selling burgers and fries and chicken nuggets. But the real business of McDonald's is real estate. They own more prime real estate in the world than anybody else. And they lease that back to their franchisees. That's the real business of the McDonald's business model, real estate. Burgers and fries are just, how you get your franchisees, to get them in there. And then you have your McDonald's. Well, the real money in McDonald's is real estate. The real money for First Solar and all these alternative energy businesses, and I suspect the real reason they are working so hard and spending so much money as lobbyists is to keep those subsidies. And the business behind the subsidies is carbon credits. So carbon credits are tax credits that are awarded to a company that's in green energy for their magically calculated efforts to reduce the world's carbon footprint, as you've probably heard. Even better, these credits can be sold to other companies who have nothing to do with clean air, water, or land. So First Solar, as an example, just one sale this last year sold in one sale $650 million in credits to a tech company. That's free money in the bank that they were able to sell these, magical credits, which is nothing, to another company that needed to use them so that they could they got $650 million for, it's not even a thing, tax credits. That's from you and me. $650 million, an imaginary thing that a company is able to sell to another company so that that company doesn't get persecuted by regulations in the government. It's amazing. It's truly, what a business. That's the real estate in the McDonald's model behind all of these quote unquote green energy companies. So the petroleum industry, look, they get tons of government subsidies as well. Maybe more than the green energy cabal. Depends on what stat you're looking at, whether it's in the United States. Doesn't appear to be that way right now. Globally, petroleum gets way more subsidies globally than green energy does. But the subsidies, any type of subsidy, it just drills down, whether it's, to the farmer next door, to the economic development grants around the country, to small businesses, or, all of the subsidies essentially that go into our welfare state. It's our money, and that's what we're spending on. And believe me, these organizations, these companies spend a lot of money on lobbying our elected officials to make sure that money stays in those subsidies so they can continue to rake in the bucks on the taxpayers' back. Now, quote unquote conservative renewable energy lobbying groups such as the Conservative Energy Network, CEN, promise in their marketing materials that energy prices will fall once we have created this vast green energy infrastructure. Well, with $370 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal, in green energy subsidies for infrastructure, the Biden administration considered, under the guidance of Podesta, that they would take away the permitting governance from localities to prevent those darn state legislators and county supervisors across the country from holding up progress, which is what was happening. It was like, look, we've got these we've got these huge solar farms, we've got these wind farms, but we need to get these electrical lines, and we need to bring them, we got to get these electrical lines out from the rural areas where we can put all of these projects so that we can get the electricity to the urban areas. And that takes sometimes not even in the same state or several states away, but we're going to need infrastructure to do that. We need to carry this electricity to these other places. So that solar field in your backyard, well, not necessarily in your backyard, but that solar field or those big wind turbines that we see all over the state of Iowa, that energy isn't necessarily even going to folks here in Iowa. It's going somewhere else. They're just putting their junk in our backyard because we'll take it. And so the Biden administration was getting sick and tired of dealing with these different states that were causing all of these holdups to get this energy from all of this renewable energy, these sources, solar fields, wind fields, whatever it happens to be, to the big cities, which vote blue anyway. So they wanted to take that away, that the power to the permitting governance away from the state and counties and so forth. That didn't happen, but we'll see what occurs because they needed to get that. They need to get that electricity over there to Denver. So SunZia, which is a Pattern Energy company, it's owned by Pattern Energy, is currently in the process of building the largest wind farm. We think we got a lot of windmills here in Iowa. The largest wind farm in the Western Hemisphere is about to be built in the United States, or is in the process of being built in the Southwest United States. So that's energy that is nearly entirely funded by tax dollars. And wind energy is notoriously unreliable. I remember when Trump said, we can't watch TV tonight, dear. The wind isn't blowing, or whatever. I mean, you need wind, to make those things work. At least not half the day is dark, which is the situation with solar. In some, I guess, the wind industry does get more subsidies, apparently, and solar and wind combined get more direct and indirect subsidies, and that's according to climateataglance.com. Now, according to Reason, AWEA gets some 20 times the U.S. petroleum subsidies. And when you consider the renewable portfolio standard, and that's investor groups, energy companies, and thus customers like you and I, are forced to purchase a percentage of renewable energy, you can see how those indirect subsidies play such a significant role. President Obama promised the world that by 2035, in just under a decade now, 80% of U.S. energy would come from, quote unquote, green resources. Well, I mean, it's a president talking like he did. And Trump, said this, we're going to go to Mars, plant a flag on Mars. So, I mean, these are presidential things. We'll see if it happens. But is it, how much does it cost? And is it actually a benefit? So to return to our Iowa farmer commercial, consider our farm subsidies, another example, which promote low-cost grain to market production for the consumer in exchange for subsidies paid to farmers and lobbied by Leviathan organizations like the Farm Bureau, which includes something as seemingly simple in the Farm Bill like ARC, which is the Agricultural Risk Coverage Program, and that's for grain. Now, it sounds like an insurance policy, which would make sense if it's lobbied for by an industry like Farm Bureau. But in fact, that's just how it's marketed. It's a weird insurance policy, though, for farmers. The farmers don't pay a premium like you or I do, say, for health or auto or home or life insurance policies. Rather, it's considered income support, which ultimately allows farmers to maintain an income at the taxpayer's expense to, in many ways, assure there is fodder for humans, livestock, and more importantly, I'd say, for the banks. So, once again, the McDonald's Burger and Fries retail portrait in farming is food and biofuel products. That's the burger and fries side of it, making American energy and food independent. But the McDonald's real estate behind the Farm Bill, behind the burgers and the fries in this case, is actually debt. The debt industry generated by farmers for machinery, land, inputs, annual operating costs, well, that's the real prize for large and small banks nationwide, keeping the farmers just afloat long enough to continue that interest income of the lending industry. That's the real commodity. Can we agree, though, that subsidies are not in line with free market values? Can we concur maybe that when the government, with the help of billions of dollars of lobbying funds, when they pick winners and losers, whether it's in energy or agriculture, education, or any other element of our free society, they inevitably rob the proverbial Peter to pay Paul? I'm reminded of a conversation that I had in 2009 with a young recruiting assistant I had working for me. He wasn't that young. He was younger than me. But this was during the Obama administration, and also it was at the ramp-up of all these wind turbines being erected here in Iowa. Now, he was convinced that even though there was just a little increase in our energy bills, and we got letters. I got a letter, you got a letter, we all got letters saying that our bills were going to go up a little bit because, we're building infrastructure for all this renewable energy. But it would ultimately lead to a reduction in energy costs once that infrastructure was in place. And he was convinced that this actually was the case. And I did not buy it. The promise was that these wind turbines, they would last for, say, 20 years. That was the plan. And that their output would generate massive energy surpluses, which thus would result in cheaper energy prices for you and me. The truth, of course, is that we now know these turbines can't make it 20 years without significant maintenance costs, that those giant 20-ton turbine engines and their complex gear systems within usually wear out in a decade or less, in a never-ending cycle of replacement and upkeep with no clear mode of disposal or recycling. And that now, some 15 years later, we have not seen a reduction on our monthly energy bills. Well, that's probably because we're using more stuff, and more stuff takes electricity. So it's just that we have a greater need. And certainly that's the case. As our computing potential grows and grows by leaps and bounds, it seems like every day, maybe there is just a greater demand, and maybe that's why we haven't seen any reduction whatsoever in our energy prices when we get our bills at home. My point to him was, though, why would energy companies ever reduce the prices once they have established a revenue floor upon which they could stand? And Americans, with our short-term memory issues, I wouldn't pay attention to it anyway. Just what energy costs. But we're doing good. Imagine how expensive it would be if we didn't have all of these completely taxpayer-subsidized green energy things. Even at our local school board level, I can tell you when I came on the board, we were deeply interested in building a solar field on our FFA plot, which we thought could reduce our energy costs as a district. So then we could offset our general fund expenditures over time, which would support another 2, maybe even 3 teaching positions just by, managing our utilities in a different way, which comes out of the general fund. What we learned, though, and why we ultimately scrapped that concept, was that there was no way to generate enough energy at a rate that would achieve those means, limited by the regulations on everything from ownership to development and required maintenance that would make it work. The only way it could be done was through private investors whose profits would be generated from subsidies, and which would take nearly 18 years at most of these achievable rates, and at which time our district would receive ownership, but then we'd be left with a near total solar field replacement. And by then, it would be cost prohibitive. Needless to say, that idea was kiboshed by yours truly. Now, if an idea in a truly fair market capitalist system is good, and wind energy, solar energy, bioethanol, biodiesel, nuclear, all of these things, I think they are good ideas. If they're truly good, it will inspire real innovation, which I think in some capacities it has done. And I also think if that idea is good in that type of system, which we're supposed to have, it will attract investors who see the value in it and are willing to bet their own money on it, not the taxpayers. Without subsidy, it should achieve a lucrative return if it's a good idea. If it doesn't, it either isn't a good idea and it will be abandoned, or it is a good idea, but it needs to be tweaked or improved on in such a way to make it lucrative for their investors. That's how it happens. That's how it's supposed to happen. That's fair. And that's, in my opinion, truly green. That's what we should be looking for, not subsidies. When the government picks winners and losers, it just doesn't work out. It works out for a small group who have enough power and maybe enough startup capital, not to invest maybe in a new business, but maybe to invest in enough legislators to make sure that they get the look that they need to make their business a winner. And that's not fair, regardless of where it comes from. So, subsidies, lobbyists, it's fun to lobby, and they're all doing it. And maybe you should too. Pay attention. And not just from the YouTube commercial our dear farmer friend out there from Adams County who truly believes in all of that stuff. And that's fine. But it's that was paid for and produced by an organization that very desperately wants to make sure that those taxpayer subsidies continue to flow through their bank. And they can continue to sell their energy credits at a profit to whomever they wish. You and I can't do that. Seems kind of upside down. Well, that might be the case. But I recommend that you, it's getting colder again. Maybe you throw on a nice wool turtleneck, run up and down the steps a little bit, get those steps in, get that biothermal energy going, and see if there are some tax credits you might be able to sell to the dude in the t-shirt. Maybe then you can be the sunny side of someone else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of The Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.